Claire was 29, a marketing director in Chicago, the kind of daughter who picked up on the first ring, even in meetings. Her mother, Patricia, had trained her for that her whole life without either of them ever calling it training. It started on a Tuesday. Julia, 23, the baby of the family, called on video, laughing, holding up a ring that caught the light. Engaged to Derek Hollis, whose family owned 3 boutique hotels along the coast. Claire screamed. She meant it. She was happy. Then Patricia's voice cut in from somewhere off camera, flat and fast. "Don't book flights yet. We're keeping this small." Claire laughed it off. Mothers get weird about weddings, she told herself. She had no idea her mother wasn't talking about the guest list. She was talking about her. A week later, both parents called together, and Claire's stomach dropped before either of them said a word. She knew this pattern. A joint call from Gerald and Patricia meant money. Her dad's architecture firm had lost its biggest client 2 years back and never recovered. He explained, carefully, like he'd rehearsed it, that deposits were due within the week. Derek's family was covering the honeymoon and rehearsal dinner. The ceremony, the reception, the expensive half, that was on the Bennetts. "How much?" Claire said. $46,000. Patricia jumped in before Claire could react. "You just secure it with your card. We pay you back after. Why not ask the Hollises? They clearly have it." Her mother's voice sharpened instantly, like Claire had touched a nerve that had nothing to do with the wedding. Her dad filled the silence with the real reason, though none of them would call it that yet. The Hollis family was renovating 3 properties, and his firm wanted the bid. In one sentence, Claire understood. This wasn't her sister's wedding anymore. It was a business pitch wearing a wedding dress. She should have said no. Instead, she asked for the paperwork, and what she found in it would matter more than any of them knew yet. Claire read contracts for a living. When they arrived, she found her name exactly once, buried on page 4, third-party payment guarantor. Not host, not family, guarantor. She flagged it by email. Patricia's reply came back in under 3 minutes. Too fast for someone who'd supposedly had to check with a lawyer. "That's just boilerplate, sweetheart." Claire almost let it go. Then something made her pause. A small detail she wouldn't understand the weight of until months later. The wording was familiar. She'd seen language almost identical to it before, years ago, and she couldn't place where. She paid the deposit anyway, $4,800, non-refundable. She told herself the same thing she always told herself, that showing up now meant they'd finally show up for her. Beat escalation. 2 days later, a group chat appeared for wedding planning. Claire wasn't in it. She only found out because Julia accidentally forwarded her a screenshot from inside it. "It's just for people close by," Julia said when asked. "Time zones make it complicated." Claire lived 40 minutes from that venue. She told herself it was an oversight. Then came the rehearsal dinner photos, posted publicly 3 days before the wedding. Julia between Patricia and Derek's mother, under a banner reading "Two families becoming one." Claire, who'd already put nearly $5,000 toward that exact evening, wasn't in a single frame. She texted Julia. The reply took 4 hours. "It kind of became last minute. There wasn't time to loop you in." They were both in Chicago. There had been plenty of time. There just hadn't been room for her. 3 nights before the wedding, Patricia called with instructions that sounded less like planning and more like management. "Don't come by the house beforehand. Everyone's exhausted. Just meet us at the venue." "Does Julia need help getting ready?" A pause, half a second too long. "The bridal suite's full. There's no room." There's no room. Claire would think about that phrase again in exactly 20 minutes, standing outside a building with 300 empty chairs inside it. She arrived with the gift and a toast half written on her phone. Something about Julia at 8 years old, staging pretend weddings with a bedsheet for a veil. She never got to give it. The list came up empty a 3rd time. That's when Patricia stepped outside. No hug, no hello, just, "Only family is allowed inside today. You shouldn't have come." Claire looked past her, straight at her father. He didn't meet her eyes. His silence said more than anything her mother could have. "I paid the deposit that got this venue," Claire said. Her voice didn't shake, and that surprised her. "I am family." That's when Derek's mother, Lorraine, walked over, drawn by the tension. "Is everything all right? Who is this?" Patricia answered before Claire could open her mouth. "She's with the venue's billing office, just here about an invoice." Claire could have said it right there. "I'm her sister. I paid for this wedding. She's lying to your face." Instead, she looked past her mother through the glass hallway and found Julia already in her dress, watching the entire exchange. Their eyes met. Julia didn't move, didn't call her name. She turned away. That single motion told Claire everything. Julia had known. Maybe for weeks. Claire walked back to her car, set the gift on the passenger seat, and drove off as the music started inside. Sitting in that parking lot, Claire finally remembered where she'd seen that contract language before. 6 years earlier, during her last year of college, her parents had asked her to temporarily put a semester of Julia's private tutoring on her own credit card, just until they sorted out a cash flow issue with the shop. "We'll pay you back after," the exact phrase. She'd forgotten because they never brought it up again, and she'd been too relieved to graduate debt light to chase it. This wasn't a wedding problem. It was a pattern with new decorations. 3 days of silence followed. Then, Tuesday morning, Patricia called. Not to ask if Claire made it home safely, but to ask one question, voice tight with something close to panic. "The remaining balance is due. What are we doing about the $41,000? Claire didn't raise her voice. "You said only family was allowed inside, so the family inside can pay for it." 4 seconds of silence. Then the call ended. An hour later, Claire's phone rang again. Not her mother, not Julia. Her Aunt Diane, her father's older sister, a retired mediator who'd sat quietly through the ceremony and noticed the empty seat beside her. "Whose names are on those contracts?" Diane asked, skipping past comfort entirely. "Because if it isn't yours, you don't owe anyone a cent, and I don't want to hear you feel guilty about it." It was the first honest thing anyone had said to Claire in 6 months. What Claire didn't know yet was that Diane had asked her brother the exact same question 15 years earlier about a very different debt, and never gotten a real answer either. Claire declined the payment authorization in writing, citing the same clause her mother once called boilerplate. Legally, the $41,200 reverted to the 3 names actually on the contracts: Gerald, Patricia, Julia. Derek found out by accident when a vendor mentioned Claire's name on an invoice he wasn't supposed to see. When he asked Julia who Claire really was, she finally told him everything: the deposit, the door, the lie about the billing office. Lorraine Hollis had already begun quiet conversations about handing Gerald's firm the renovation contract, the entire reason this lie existed in the first place. When she learned the truth, she didn't raise her voice either. She simply told Gerald that a man who let his own daughter be humiliated to protect a business deal wasn't someone she wanted managing anything for her family. The contract was gone within the week. Julia called that night, crying. Not for Claire at first, but because Derek was furious, and the wedding she'd dreamed about since childhood was already cracking. Her voice trembling, she asked if Claire could just cover half. Even mid-apology, she was still doing math. Claire finally said the thing she'd swallowed her whole life. "I'll talk to you when you're ready to have a conversation that isn't about money." Patricia's consequences weren't legal. They were social, and somehow that hurt her more. Lorraine quietly stepped back from a charity board she and Patricia had co-chaired for 6 years, telling the committee only that she no longer trusted the financial claims of certain members. Chicago's tight social circle is smaller than people think. Questions traveled fast. Within a month, Patricia had resigned. Gerald's reckoning was slower and quieter. 2 months later, an email arrived. Subject line, "No excuse." He admitted he'd known exactly what Patricia planned at that door and let it happen because he was afraid of losing the contract. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He started repaying the $4,800 deposit in installments without being asked twice. And in the same email, without prompting, he mentioned the tuition money from college. He'd never forgotten it either. He just never planned on saying so. 5 months after the wedding, Julia reached out one final time. This message was different, shorter, and for the first time, it didn't mention a single dollar amount. She wrote that she'd known what her mother planned, and stayed quiet because she was afraid of losing the wedding and the Hollis family's approval. She wrote that she'd seen Claire through that glass hallway and chosen to look away. That was the first apology that actually named the choice instead of the consequences. Claire agreed to one phone call, then another. They talk now, once a month, 30 minutes at a time, sometimes stiff, sometimes honest, never once about money. Patricia has never apologized. She still calls it a misunderstanding to anyone who will listen. Claire has stopped waiting for the story to change. Because here's what she learned sitting in that parking lot with an unopened gift on the passenger seat. A boundary isn't an argument you have to win. It doesn't need the other person's understanding to be real. It's simply the line that tells the world what you'll allow and what happens the moment someone crosses it. She didn't crash the wedding. She didn't expose anyone at the altar. She didn't have to. She just stopped paying for a seat at a table that was never set for her in the first place, and realized, too late to get the years back, that it never had been. If you were standing at that door, gift in your hands, would you have paid the remaining $41,200 or walked back to your car the way Claire did? Type boundary below if you think self-respect is worth more than keeping the peace. And if this story reminded you of someone in your own life, hit subscribe. Real family was never about who shares your last name. It's about who still makes room for you when you have nothing left to give but yourself.